It's really great to have everyone here. And for Startup Grind, for those of you who it's your first time, Startup Grind is the world's largest community of entrepreneurs that's independently created. We have over 600 chapters in over 125 countries. So we truly have a global presence. We are powered by Google for startups. And our mission is really to connect people, bring them together. I think one of the key values of Startup Grind that really resonates with me is you want to make friends, not contacts. And I think that's what we're all here to do today. So for those of you who are streaming online, we also welcome you into our global network, and we hope that you can join us again in person very soon. And then without further ado, I'm so excited to welcome Quinn Vittum. He is the executive director of Reuse Hawaii. He founded the program back in 2006, so you guys are going very strong. Quinn, this is not his first nonprofit. He also had two nonprofits over in Olympia, Washington. So he is, I would say, experienced. Would you agree with me?
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Seasoned. We'll take that. Yeah. So Quinn is very seasoned, and we're excited to learn more about his story as an entrepreneur. So if I can get a round of applause for Quinn, and I have a lei for you, Quinn. So we're so excited to have you here.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks.
All right. Well, great. Well, let's just jump right into it. So Quinn, tell me, how did you become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Really appreciate you inviting me. I'm just honored and feel lucky to be the first person to come to the in-person event. And it's just it's been a long road, and it's just great to see everyone and actually have conversations face to face.
Right.
So I like a lot of people, just have been really lucky in my path, and had an opportunity when I lived in Washington State to start a Habitat for Humanity restore.
Okay.
It's a habitat model where they basically create a store to harness donations from the public to support affordable housing, and so it was really fun, and we did that for a couple years, and then outgrew that model, and started an independent organization called Olympia Salvage, and worked at Fort Lewis, a big Army base in Washington State, taking down all the old barracks from just that were obsolete and that they didn't use anymore, full of great material. So I just started seeing all the potential in transforming the practice of demolition, and instead doing what we call deconstruction, disassembling buildings in the opposite order that they're built, so that you can preserve material for reuse and recycling, and make a community resource out of what would otherwise go into the landfill.
Right.
So pretty basic principle, but takes a lot of work, and I've been really lucky to have some great experiences with the 3 startups that I've done to kind of figure out how to make it happen.
Wow, that's awesome. So it sounds like each of those experiences kind of all culminated in the Reuse Hawaii store. That's really great. So were there any early signs of entrepreneurship? When you were younger, did you kind of have a feeling, like this dream, like one day I'm going to be an entrepreneur? Anything like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love my parents. They're both, business people. My dad's a builder. He says he's retired, but once a builder, always a builder. And my mom is also just super creative, and we were homeschooled from 1st to 6th grade. And one of the things that we did as my brothers and my mom and I was we started a book and toy store because we had all these kind of cooperative games and all this neat stuff that we love to do as a homeschooling family, and we wanted to kind of share it with the enormous community in Tamworth, New Hampshire, 3,000 people. And so we basically opened up our dining room and made a little store. And so people put a sign at the end of the driveway, and people could come up and browse what we had. So it was really fun. And then we expanded it to above the garage, big time expansions. It was actually really neat, all pine, the ceiling, floor, and walls. Welcome to New Hampshire. And then we installed the bell, so when you're in the house, you heard the bell and run up to the top of the garage and see who was there, what they might want. So then my parents bought a piece of property like 10 minutes away, and I had the store there, and I worked there in the summers and after school with my mom and stuff. And, at the time, you're just like, whatever, Woodland Books and Toys is what we do. But it's also like really great experience to learn how to interface with customers and handle cash and deal with inventory and that kind of thing.
Okay. So. How long were you doing that for?
Well, that was just an ongoing thing throughout our teenage years. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Still doing it.
Still doing it. Yeah, and speaking of toys and wonderful characters, I forgot to introduce Monkey. Monkey is my 3-year-old son's friend, and I told him that he'd come along with me tonight. So he's a beloved friend and member of the family. So
that's awesome.
Yay, Monkey.
I'm sure there's applauses there. Awesome. So then more recently in Olympia, Washington, tell us a little bit more about some of your work there and maybe how it led to your, what you created with Reuse Hawaii.
Yeah, well, I went to Evergreen State College, and for folks that know it, it's just a really great college, a state school, but you'd never know it. And if you want, at Evergreen, you can create your own curriculum. And so I basically designed my own studies around building material reuse and architectural salvage and things like that. I had seen a lot of salvaging clawfoot tubs and stained glass windows and mantles and all things that were obviously important to salvage before a building was demolished. But we would also go into the attics and see all the rafters and ceiling joists and all the amazing old growth Douglas fir. And I just thought, man, we got to save this stuff too. So I wrote a business plan at Evergreen to create an organization that would be a little bit more bold in salvaging the entire building. And then when I was done with that, I decided to, actually do it. So it was, pretty good opportunity. I had a lot of support, amazing people in Olympia, super hard workers, because, Olympia is rainy most of the time. And so try and go disassemble a house in that kind of weather is super hard, but I was proud of everyone involved. It was fun.
Awesome. And then it sounds like after that, I've heard some really great stories of your travels. It sounds like you had the opportunity to go to some pretty interesting places and learn some interesting things. I think we're curious to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, that was so before I recommend this to younger folks that, they're kind of between school or work, is just, take off and explore the world. I was really, really lucky and glad I did it. And I was able to do it on the cheap too, because I went to Europe and did willing workers on organic farms. And so you can volunteer at a farm and, they put you up and feed you, and you do 6 hours of work a day and get to experience the culture. And it's just amazing. I went to 6 different farms, and then I did the grape harvest in the fall for Beaujolais, the red wine that everyone loves there. So So that was really fun to experience Europe. I was there for 9 months. And then I also went to India and did a study abroad program through the University of New Hampshire. And we were studying sustainability through the lens of the study of ecology, spirituality, and community. And so we spent most of our time at a place called Oroville.
Okay.
It's a giant intentional community, super special place. It's sort of an offshoot of the Sri Aurobindo ashram, which is kind of in the neighboring town. And we did a lot of amazing things there. They were doing a reforestation project, planting native trees to try and get the rainforest back because it was kind of eroding. It was an old cashew plantation that just ended up washing into the ocean. So India was really, really special and also kind of an eye opener. I was a New Englander and kind of sheltered from some of the intensity that you would find in other countries. And we all got off the plane in Madras, and it was just really crazy to see how dense the population was and the level of poverty and just how people live there, just how different it is. No toilet paper anywhere, for example.
Right.
So
makes the reusing and the recycling even more of a passion project.
Why are we throwing good stuff out? And there's people in India that just are starving for any kind of resource. So.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about some of these different paths that you've taken to success. I know for a lot of folks, it's not necessarily a straight path. It's more of like a winding road. But what would you say would be some of your different paths that you've taken to success?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. Windy road, key word. I think, it's so hard because like when I was in my 20s, it's just like, what can I do to make an impact in the world was sort of what I was trying to figure out. And, I just tried to be receptive to all the experiences that I had, and maybe too receptive because I landed on building material reuse and really grasped onto it because I had a background in building from working with my dad. And I thought, man, this is kind of a solution to this issue that we've always been grappling with. Like we had this part of our driveway where we just bring all the reusable material back, but then it's like you build a fort and like that's about about it. So creating a solution where you can develop an avenue for unwanted building materials to be reused and kept out of the landfill, I just really loved. Plus, there's just some really special things that just aren't made anymore, like clawfoot tubs and old growth lumber and things. But I think one of the pivotal points was actually the business plan, because I was sort of like meandering, and then by sitting down and actually typing something up was a really interesting process and got me to like think through all the parts and pieces. And I had tons of support. They, I had a community sponsor, Scott Royer, and a faculty sponsor, and then the county had free business planning advice, and so I used them a lot. But I brought actually one of the renditions, which is the Reuse Hawaii business plan from 2007.
Wow.
But it's basically what I wrote in college, just adapted for what we do here, or what we did in the beginning at least. So it was just fun to do, and I got really insane with my appendix. You can see all these black tabs, or because I wanted to show like there's a tool inventory list, and we have like copies of our business cards and press coverage, and so I just had a lot of fun, basically, making the case that this is a really viable, exciting new venture.
Yeah.
And And it really paid off because it, I think with certain folks, funders in particular,
Yeah.
when they could see, you know, this is 2007, so you had a hard copy. It was real weird times. But it just instilled a lot of confidence, and we also entered it into the business planning competition at Chaminade.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was funny. They said, okay, we're having the ceremony where we talk about, you know, the top 3 winners, and so we go and we're like, well, you know, we're probably not on the list, but let's just see who got it. And so they go through like 3rd place and 2nd place. We're like, wow, we didn't get that. And then 1st place, they called us up. It was really, really special. Best out of 40, so it's right here.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Definitely got an A on that one. Okay, so I guess that's a little bit of the idea behind Reuse Hawaii, but where did the original idea kind of spark? I know that there was a moment with your co-founder where you kind of were like, okay, this is something that we're thinking about doing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, like in Olympia, I was like trying to kind of figure out like how to scale it and how to make a big impact, how to not be struggling all the time, and you know, how to, you know, go back to the point of making a difference in the world and maximizing my impact in the time that I had. And so I got invited to speak at this EPA conference in Atlanta. This is 2005. Also a weird time, before smartphones, right? And I talked about building material organizations and how to get one started, because I had done 2. Okay, right. Tons of credibility.
Right.
But it's a, you know, it's a small industry, so you know, I had kind of a lot to share on it. And I met Selena, who is co-founder, who left in 2014, but was really a huge impact to the organization, and had the original idea. She was an interior designer here in town, and saw all the waste, and so we decided to team up. And I was shocked that as an island community, no one was doing like a decent scale building material reuse operation, because if there's any place we should be keeping stuff out of the landfill, it's in Hawaii, right, or other island communities. Yeah, and so sorry, what was your question again?
My question is how you originally came up with the idea for Reuse.
Okay, yeah. So teamed up with Selena and then a bunch of other people. You know, one of the things I want to make clear is like an enterprise like Reuse is comprised of so many amazing people that just work their butts off to make a difference, and we see that now. Our team at Reuse is just super special, super dedicated. And so yeah, we spent a whole year doing like kind of networking and some marketing and a little bit of fundraising, and you know, just trying to kind of figure out like what the steps were to kind of get it going. And we did a pilot project in Nu'uanu, and then we did a kickoff presentation at Unity Church, which was incredible. It was the place was packed.
That's
We're like,
awesome.
wow, yeah. Just had gotten out, and it's building material reuse and salvaging material. It's such a tangible idea that everyone sort of gets. Like, you don't have to really explain it. It's like, oh, keep reusable material out of the landfill. And so we had a lot of folks that like were in the industry that had seen the problem. Like, finally, somebody's like figuring this out. Yeah, then we were on NPR, HPR, and talk show, just kind of talking about what we were doing. And somebody from the Army was listening, and they thought, well, we've got this giant warehouse at Fort Shafter Flats we're about to demolish. Why don't we call them? And so I went down and I did like a feasibility study for them on like what they could do with this giant. It's huge. I was joking, you could see the curvature of the earth when you were looking down the building, because it was so long, 180 feet long. So we did the feasibility report, And of course, everyone was really excited because of salvageable material, corrugated metal, and all the wood framing. And they hired a local contractor to do the work, and then they approached us and said, "Would you like to deconstruct it?" And so that was a funny conversation because we didn't have a crew. So I went to their office in Campbell, and was, you know, they're saying, "So, like, you know, who you got on your crew?" I was like, "Well, you know." So it was really touching because the fact that they had so much confidence all together and pull this huge project off was really incredible. I always think about them. I'm still in touch with. Yeah, so we deconstructed it, and it went really well. And we opened up a lot at Point Panic in Kaka'ako, because you don't really need a giant warehouse when you're doing a startup like this. You know, you just have a lot of empty space otherwise. Sounds like you're familiar with that phenomenon, George. And so it was a 10,000 square foot lot, and credit to Hawaii Community Development Authority. As folks know, they're a state agency that oversees Kaka'ako and Kalailoa. And they were just super supportive. Tony Ching was the executive director at the time, and he could, like many, could see the potential of what to do, and helped us a lot. And so once we were at the yard for a year, once we grew, Tony said, "Hey, we have a warehouse that you might be interested in." So he showed us our existing place, and so we've been there for 12 years now. Yeah.
Awesome. And then what would be like some of your advice to people who are thinking about doing something entrepreneurial? What would you say to those folks?
Yeah, well, I mean, it really depends on what you're doing. There's just so many variations of projects and scales, and you know, uh, formations of how you set up your organization. But you know, I recommend like thinking it really through and creating a super strong network that you can basically leverage to make it come true. Um, and and that can be really hard. You know, it's like George and I were in Omidyar Fellows, and man, it's like really helped because like we've become part of this greater network, the Forum of Fellows, and it's super helpful. But I'm like, man, it must be really hard for folks that just don't have their developed network yet. So I'd say that's like a really important thing to work on. Find your mentor. Um, we have a lot of mentors at Reuse Hawaii that little do they know we sort of like start talking, and like they just become like a key player in like helping us navigate things. So, and it's also touching because you can sort of invite people to be your supporter and your mentor. And think about that, if like they, you know, sort of like me tonight, most seriousness. And so it's a really to invite people to be your mentor. So I would make a strong suggestion depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. I think a lot of times people kind of wait for someone to reach out for them, but I could see that there'd be advantages of doing it the other way around. So in terms of like reaching the scale that Reuse Hawaii has reached, like what would you recommend for businesses that are looking to scale up? Or like even just if you're getting started, what would you recommend in terms of like creating the scale that they want to have?
Yeah, this is hard. This is a really tough one. Especially for me, it was like really difficult because we're so operational.
Yeah.
It's like you can't do anything without a flatbed or a forklift or like, you know, sawzalls and all this stuff, you know, all this infrastructure. And so getting up to speed was really difficult. The first thing we did is we bought a trailer for all of our tools, and I parked it in my driveway. and started building shelves in it. Just yeah, one of my mentors and coaches, Dave Viotti, has a coaching and consulting firm called Smallify.
Okay.
And his whole thing is, take a small piece and just get started on it. It's like break things up into, it's because we're doing some big things here, right? And so how to kind of break it up into smaller chunks that are attainable. And the way he says it, it's like, you want to run a marathon, take a walk around the block. So that's kind of sort of an important thing, because your mind can kind of explode, if you're trying to sort of think through everything. So it's like just kind of get started on something that is important to start gaining momentum. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And what would you say have been the biggest challenge that you faced as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, hard to choose. Yeah, it's like, it's a real journey. There's a lot of, we were talking earlier just about, you're going down a path and it's just, whack-a-mole, where you just have to sort of pivot and adapt. And I think for us, like, just having enough capital and cash flow has been really tricky.
Yeah.
Just running an operation. We have 37 staff members and 2 retail facilities, and right now we're running 4 deconstruction crews between here and Hawaiʻi Island, and it just requires a ton of output, in terms of expenses. And so it's just that can get away from you really quickly.
Yeah.
And so I've actually in the last several years have really started honing in on monitoring finances and really keeping your finger on the pulse of where the cash flow is and what's going on with your potential revenue coming in and what kind of unexpected things might happen. Because it's scary. Like, you can spend, we were talking earlier again about, working for 2 years on a startup, but then what if just one thing goes wrong and the whole thing just slides into nothingness? It's like really scary. And so I think keeping track of the finances is like one thing that you can do to really protect the investment that you put into your startup. And it's, so one of the challenges is definitely that. I think, like, retaining key personnel has also been super tough. Like, we'll get like into a rhythm and then somebody will just leave. It's fine. People just have other interest and things to do, but it can really take away some momentum. And so, that's been, especially in the early days, because we have this model where we have team leaders that run our deconstruction sites, disassembling buildings. And they, if you team lead a couple of projects, you start getting good at it. And man, when they leave, we're just like, man, like all that, institutional knowledge about how to cut down rafters and salvage wall hung sinks or whatever it is. And, but I think, just we've also kind of learned some lessons about, supporting our staff and including them in some of the decision making and empowering them in their leadership roles, and giving them authority can really help. Because, like, when you're in charge, like, that's motivating and people end up sticking around. So it's a couple tricks to that, but. Yeah, so I think retention of key personnel, and there's actually a part of the business plan that talks about our risks, and key personnel is at the top, because you can do all this
all
work.
All the way back in that business plan that you originally created.
Yeah.
Right up there is key personnel, isn't it?
Yeah, loss of key personnel is the heading. Yeah. So
you were planning for this.
The other challenge for us is what I refer to as the demolition paradigm. And it's basically like in the industry, we've got some real estate people here that know this is, you know, the industry just says, you get an excavator, smash it down, send it to landfill, move on with your new build. And so we're trying to kind of help the industry think a little bit differently about that and understand the importance of waste reduction and the fact that there's tons of great reusable community resources within these buildings that they don't need anymore. And there's a path to being more sustainable in the way that we renew the built environment. And plus, the plug on the reuse model here is all the material that we salvage for reuse is a tax deductible donation. So there's an economic benefit that people need to pay attention to too. And for the folks that notice it and leverage it, it pays off big time. So we can do things sustainably and it pays off financially as well.
Okay.
So there's a longer list of challenges, but I'm sure you have more questions.
Well, we might come back to it.
Okay.
So funding and revenue is often a challenge for businesses that are in the startup stages. Is there any advice that you would have for businesses that are looking to secure funding or just get started?
Yeah. I'm looking at George. Well, like, so it may come back to the relationship point. Like we were really lucky to gain the confidence of the Hawaii Community Foundation early on, and they gave us some seed funding. One of the grants was $30,000, and back then it was like all the money in the world, right? And it really helped us. I mean, of course, without it, it would have been nearly impossible.
What organization was that?
Hawaii Community Foundation. Yeah. It's my HCF plug. But yeah, then other relationships. We were lucky to meet folks that worked with the Omidyars, the Omidyar family, Pierre and Pam, who are just the most gracious people and so generous. And we were one of the first organizations that Ulupono Initiative funded, because they have kind of three focus areas: food, energy, and waste. And so, they really saw us as an important player in the waste piece and helped us kind of implement some key pieces early on that helped us to get to the point that we are now. I think operating lean is a really key piece. I know it's hard. But it's just a nature of getting things going. I mean, unless you just get some sort of windfall, piece of funding that just helps you, do what you need to do. But that's kind of seldom that you would have that experience. So yeah, running lean and just being really strategic and pointed with how you're spending your time, because a lot of it, like for me, it was like, there was just a select few people that did most of the work, right? And we could probably have twice as many people working, right, doing the same amount of work. So it's intense, yeah. So other tips on funding. I was always a little squeamish about loans early on. It's like, ooh, loans, and we got to pay it back. But it's actually been a key piece that we've leveraged more recently for equipment in particular, because banks, they collateralize the equipment, so it's pretty easy to get an equipment loan. And for us, like a compact telehandler, basically a forklift with a boom that extends out, it's just night and day for what we do. And renting them is really, really expensive. So we have 4 of them now, and without equipment loans, we'd still be renting, and it would really affect our bottom line. So, a couple tips on that.
Great. Yeah, I think that's really helpful. So what kind of startups, in your opinion, do you think that people should think about building now, given all of the changes that we've experienced in the last year?
Especially in Hawaii.
Especially
in Hawaii.
Oh wow, gee, okay. Well, now you're just treating me like more an authority than I really am. But
all opinion based, no pressure.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think obviously, like, things that can be done to address the climate crisis is key. And there's a lot that people are doing. All this stuff at Elemental Accelerator and Hawaii Energy's work and all this, but there's no shortage of need in addressing the issue. So that's one. I'll have to say, here in Hawaii, and in particular on Oahu, our waste problem is really coming to a head. I knew that it would, it's always been an issue, and I knew that it would become a more serious problem at some point. I just didn't realize it would be now. Like, our landfills are having to close fairly soon. The construction landfill might close in the next 5 to 10 years, and the Waimanalo Gulch municipal landfill is closing in a similar time frame, actually. So it's kind of a scary thing, because if you look at Oahu, and the size of land that you would need for a landfill, pretty slim pickings on where you would build that. And so we're trying to kind of strategize on our end, like how we can scale to address the need and just keep stuff out of the landfill so there's less of a need there. But anybody that has solutions for waste reduction, in particular around construction waste, because it's a third of our overall waste stream, right? So the demolition and remodel of buildings, 600,000 tons a year annually go into the landfill from this waste stream. So lots to be done on that. We're actually thinking about ways that we can support the greater industry in doing trainings around deconstruction and building material reuse, so that we're not the only ones doing it, because there's no way we'll be able to address the whole thing. It needs to be a deeper change in the system.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome.
Yeah, so those are a few things, but I defer to everyone here too, because I know there's a lot of really exciting things happening, and people are already engaging and mobilizing on creative ideas to make the world a better place. So let me know how I can support.
Awesome. Well, we've got time for one more question, then we want to go into our rapid fire segment. They'll be civil, I promise. So what would you say has been your biggest inspiration, or an individual who's been your biggest inspiration?
You mean besides George? Oh, okay.
Besides George.
Gee, biggest inspiration. Oh, man. Can we circle back to that in a second? This is a serious question.
Okay, then we'll give you a free pass on that one.
We're coming back, but yeah.
Okay. We'll come back to that one later. But what would you say we can all do to build a better environment here in Hawaii?
Oh, yeah, okay. Another tough one. Gee, Liz, you're really going for the gold here.
I'm going for the hard balls.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think like being collaborative and respectful is a really key piece. Like, I've seen, like, in the business world, like, sometimes, like, there's, like, like really terrible, but a little bit manipulation, a little bit like kind of scheming. And I just, sometimes I just don't think it's necessary. I think we can all be collaborative and connect and be present with each other to do this all together. And so I'm just a proponent of the business community evolving to be more of a community where we work together. And
Can I ask a follow-up question? How do we go about doing that here? How do we go about creating more connections and finding those local entrepreneurs that are doing something great and create more of?
Well, I think we're doing it right now, to an extent. That's my startup grind plug, man. Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to this network, right? Like, surround yourself with people that you resonate with, that have the same values, that you can trust, and that believe in the possibilities of what we can do as a community. So yeah, I mean, I think that again, it kind of depends on what we're doing and what the context of everything is. But yeah, I think that would be my answer to that.
Awesome. Well, we're going to launch right into the rapid fire. So we've got 21 questions for you. And then afterwards, we're going to open it up to the audience to see what questions you folks have.
21?
21.
What?
Yep. No more, no less. I promise. Okay.
Okay. All right. I'm ready. Bring it on.
All right. Number 1, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Favorite app?
Todoist.
Favorite car?
Favorite car? Datsun 210. Easy.
Favorite book?
Oh, The Stranger. Albert Camus.
Okay. Favorite movie or TV show?
I'm a Seinfeld fan. Just gonna admit it. What's up with those things?
Favorite artist? Musical.
A musician.
Yeah.
Oh man. I'm an Xavier Rudd fan.
Okay.
Yeah, the guy's amazing. Next.
Your go-to karaoke song?
Okay. I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I've never done karaoke until later tonight when George and I go out.
Perfect. Well, we all want to be there for that. What TV sitcom family would you be a member of?
I'm not a TV guy. Next.
Okay. Anything you collect?
I love old tools, vintage tools, especially Japanese stuff like chisels, and yeah, bring it on. Any
unusual skills or talents?
Non-ferrous soldering. Yeah, I'm a non-ferrous metal sculptor. We didn't cover that tonight, but it's a whole nother story.
If a movie was made of your life, what genre would it be, and who would play you?
Oh man. Okay, totally action film. And we've got Matthew McConaughey starring it up. Yeah.
What was your first job?
Well, working with my dad. Yeah. Pounding nails, probably in the wrong spot.
Okay. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Airplane pilot. Yeah.
All right. Easy. What is the best compliment someone can give you?
Nice 360 kickflip.
A cause you are passionate about.
helping people in impoverished countries with water sources. Yeah.
Okay.
It's my charity water plug.
Who are 5 people, alive or dead, you would want to have dinner with?
5 people? Okay, are they all together or?
You can plan this dinner however you'd like. You can do individual dinners or you can sit everyone around a table. Totally up to you.
Okay. How important is it that they connect to each other? Or is it just about my connection with them?
It's more focused on your connection with them. So it should be focused on who you would like to connect with. But if you'd like to change that, you also can.
Okay, so number 1, Sri Ramana Maharshi, just off the bat. I would also have Simon Sinek, leadership guy. Number 3, we'd had Bill Coy, director of Omidyar Fellows, and Glenn Giardi is there for sure. You know, it's just given. And Keone Lee, Hawaiian Investment Ready. Is that 5?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
5.
Good. It's gonna be a long night.
All right. And so what's one thing on your bucket list?
Oh, one thing on my bucket list. Well, I mean, it's not a serious bucket list, but I'd love to run more rivers in a whitewater kayak, which I did when I was in high school, and it's like incredibly fun. So yeah, it's on the list.
Okay. And what's the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Not a lot. I've kind of lucked out in that realm, but I went to Japan once, and every time you get soup, there's like a miniature squid, and I know it's like delicious and probably nutritious, but just really, it's just squid, you know. So we're just floating in liquid.
A little strange. Okay, so if you could trade lives with anyone for a day, who would it be?
Trade lives with anyone for a day, who'd it be? That's a great question. I'm sorry. Rapid fire.
Bam.
Let's see. I would trade lives with. I'd probably trade lives with Sai Baba. I'd be flying my helicopter over giant crowds in India. That would be fun.
Okay.
And I'd like manifest things out of ash, it's amazing. So.
Okay. And then if you had access to a time machine, where and when would you go?
Access to a time machine. Where would I go? Well, sometimes like when I'm in nature, I'm like, what would it be like 200 years ago? And there's this one place in New Hampshire, on Lake Winnipesaukee, that it's basically like the lake sort of splits, but it comes back together, and there's like a little sandbar. And it was where the Native Americans would be canoeing, and they'd get out and drag their canoes and then keep going. And whenever I go there, there's a road that goes through it now. But I always thought, wow, what would it be like in the 500 years ago on Lake Winnipesaukee, in a dugout canoe. So just you guys there with me? Follow me? Okay.
Well, it might be rapid fire, but it sounds like you've given that one a lot of thought.
Yeah, a lot of time on Winnipesaukee, as we know. So.
Awesome. Well, that concludes our rapid fire questions. We want to give Quinn a large round of applause. Thank you so much for being here today. And I also want to thank the Hub so much for hosting us today in your space. This has been wonderful. So great for us all to come together again. And now we're excited to open it up for questions.
There is a question from Livestream.
Okay.
What advice can you give existing businesses on reducing what we put into the landfill? Is it electronic waste, paper?
Okay.
Yeah.
Luke, did you pick that up, or should I repeat the question?
Oh, yeah, it helps if you repeat it.
Yeah. So, the question is, what can businesses do to reduce waste? Set up your recycling system. Just start with bottles and cans. It's easier said than done. Office paper, that kind of thing. Just start. Simple. There's other businesses that are larger that are faced with bigger waste streams. If you've got a building to demolish, that's like a huge opportunity to keep material out of the landfill. Opala.org has a lot of resources on that. E-waste recycling is really key. Island Recycling is an awesome resource for e-waste, paper, cardboard, and of course scrap metal. So it's my Island Recycling plug.
Yeah, they asked a follow-up. I think you already answered it, but it says, what can local businesses do with materials we don't need anymore but aren't ready to be thrown away? Assuming Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace aren't options.
Okay. It kind of depends on what the material. So the question is, what can businesses do with their unwanted materials? I mean, it depends. Like, Reuse Hawaii is a great resource for furniture, leftover building materials. There's the Habitat for Humanity Restore in Kalihi. They take all kinds of different stuff, but mostly building materials and that sort of thing. Of course, we all know Goodwill.